Rare Candy evolving into that Burn Brightly Charizard, so now getting double the effect of all fire energies in play, which unfortunately for our fire player at the moment is just the one. Alright, jumping into another game. I think today I'm bringing you the first fighting deck that I've actually showcased on the channel here. This is going to be a game of fire versus fighting. It should be an exciting matchup. Looks like our fighting player has mulliganed 3 times, so gonna put them potentially at a little bit of a disadvantage against our fire gym leader. We'll see how they're potentially able to overcome that challenge, or maybe we'll give our fire player a little bit too much of a lead. But they're gonna get started in just a second here. Here we go, flipping over. We've got the new Gouging Fire going up against a Hisuian Growlithe. Kind of funny since Growlithe is also part fire type. It's almost like we've got fire versus fire here if we were looking at the video game. But our fighting player, I believe, is the one going first. So we'll see how they start off. They're going with a Capturing Aroma. Going to be able to find either an evolution Pokemon or a basic. Most likely one in their basic in this situation. Does seem like that dice rolled off the table. I think I saw a heads and it kind of picked it up pretty quickly, but I think both players did see that that was a heads. So they should be getting an evolution Pokemon here. Again, they probably wanted to get another basic in this situation. So this is their first turn. Not going to be able to evolve anything just yet. Or I'm sorry, maybe I guess they did get a tail, so they're going to be able to get that Okidogi. Okidogi, great Pokemon. That Good Punch can do up to 140 damage if you have a Dark Energy attached. Since the attack does require 2 fighting energies, typically what you'll see like a basic fighting energy and then something like a luminous energy or a rainbow energy attached to it, which can count as both the second fighting energy you need as well as a dark energy at the same time. There goes the rainbow energy, so already meeting that darkness requirement on top of one of the fighting requirements that you need. So it's now a 230 HP Pokemon, minus that 10 damage that can do 140 damage if one more fighting energy can go on, which we can see is in the hand for our fighting player. Does retreat using that float stone on our Growlithe, so up comes Okidogi. Assuming they don't get Marnied or something on their opponent's turn, then they will be able to power up this Okidogi and start just punching away on this Gouging Fire. Down goes Fuecoco, so looks like our player is playing with the new Skelly Dirge most likely as well. For anybody that doesn't know, see if I can remember this correctly, I believe it's around 180 HP stage 2. It has an unfazed fat style ability where it's protected from the effects of attacks, and then its attack does I think 20 damage plus, or it might be similar to Palkia where it's like 60 damage plus 20 more for each bench Pokemon you and your opponent have, or it might be 20 base damage. Either way, it's pretty good ability, or pretty good attack rather, for only 2 energies. Pretty much can knock out anything in this format relatively easily. So our player also benching Slugma, so they seem to be running that Mag Cargo that lets you search your deck for a card and put it on top of your deck, and also has that Entei. So both the current and past version of our Entei is in play. Trainer's Mail finding a Guzma. Be a great way to be able to pick off something later on in the game. Probably not the card they wanted to use just yet. Wouldn't be much point in bringing up that Hisuian Growlithe, since our player is probably not going to be attacking this turn, and that Growlithe can just retreat with a Float Stone. Fighting player ideally will be able to use something like an Iono or Marnie to get rid of their opponent's hand. They obviously don't know that their opponent has a fighting energy. We do, but I do feel like fighting is signaling that they do have that in hand, since they did go ahead and just, bring this Okidogi in the active prematurely. Pokegear 3.0, failing to find any supporter. It's always disappointing when that happens. You're like, all right, great, I'm going to find a cool supporter. Here comes something in the top 7, and then you're like, oh, well, I guess nothing. Honestly, the number of times in Standard I've played 2 in a row and found nothing is just way too high. But in a form like GLC, where you tend to run pretty supporter heavy in a lot of different decks, is pretty uncommon to fail that Pokegear. Down goes our town map, so we're going to get to see what's in the prizes. Looks like that Charmeleon as well as that Salazzle, both there. Otherwise, not too bad at prizing. The Buddy Buddy Poffin, really not super needed at this point. You've already got decent board set up. Fire Energy can be grabbed if you need one later on. Tate and Lisa, pretty decent supporter, but again, not the most critical one. So Salazzle and Charmeleon, again, probably the biggest ones. Ooh, Professor Sycamore is discarding some pretty good cards. Raihan going to the discard versus Seeker Guzma. That is a rough Professor's Research, which is basically what that Professor Sycamore is. For anybody that doesn't know, by the rules of Pokemon, those actually do count as the same card, so you can't run both of those in one GLC deck. Professor's Research does grab 7 new cards, but I'm not seeing anything too amazing in the hand. Does have a Nest Ball, so can potentially find one more basic Pokemon this turn. Maybe go find that Charmeleon, since I do think I see the rare candy in hand. You could maybe go immediately into that Charizard. Yeah, I do see the rare candy, so could see our player go right for that Charmander, then try to use rare candy to evolve into Charizard next turn. Does look like it's the Pokemon Go Charizard that's in hand, which would give our player the ability to really accelerate additional energies, because that Burn Brightly ability makes all fire energies count as 2 fire energies. So you put 1 down on that Fuecoco, and that Skelly once it gets there, would instantly be able to just attack for just the 1 energy. Does ultimately go for the Charmander with that Nest Ball. So again, assuming they don't lose their hand, going to be able to evolve that into Charizard next turn. We can see our fighting player's hand, so we know they don't have any hand disruption at the moment. They could potentially target down that Charmander with their Guzma. The free retreat that they've got because of that floats on Hisuian Growlithe would make that very easy to accomplish. Just use Guzma on Charmander, then go right back up with Okidogi and attach that energy for the KO. Be a nice way to kind of slow down their opponent. That Burn Brightly is just an extremely powerful ability. Battle Compressor, going to discard some cards from the deck. Looks like they opted for 2 fire energies. That is an up to effect, so you don't have to discard all 3. Can discard anywhere between 1 to 3. Cannot choose 0, though. As long as you have cards in your deck, the game doesn't honestly know a lot. It's kind of got the memory of a toddler, but it's like, hey, you know what? I can see that you've got at least 1 card over there, so you're going to have to discard at least 1 card. Pokemon doesn't allow you to play cards knowingly for no effect. The reason you can use something like a Nest Ball and fail it is because the game has no idea if you've got basic Pokemon in your deck. So for all it knows, you could play that Nest Ball and be like, oh wow, there's no basic Pokemon in the deck. The game doesn't really know because it can't see that private information. Whereas with Battle Compressor, it can see that there's cards in your deck, even though it doesn't know what those cards are. So you have to discard at least 1. Now, there's some fire energies in the discard that will enable some of the supporters. I can't remember if it's Blacksmith or Welder. I believe it's Welder that gets the energies from the discard. Though, to be honest, I always get those 2 mixed up. But in any case, one of the 2 lets you get 2 fire energies from your discard and attach them to your fire Pokemon. Probably our player is running something like Magma Basin as well, which is another way to get fire energies from the discard onto their Pokemon. So Battle Compressor, a great way to get those energies into the discard so that you can have them where you want them and start accelerating them into play. Don't believe I saw any energies in hand, unfortunately, for our fire player. So this Gouging Fire probably just going to be left to the Wolves and going to be KO'd next turn by that Okidogi, most likely. Does only have that 130 HP, so won't survive from that good punch from that Okidogi. Okay, though, they do have 1 fire energy in hand. Going to go on that Entei. Entei, also another great basic Pokemon for fire decks. It's got effectively 150 HP when it's in the active. Its pressure ability makes it take 20 less damage from attacks when it's in the active. And then Blaze Ball requires 3 colorless energy. Oh, but does look like Guzma goes down. Does do that retreat on this Hisuian Growlithe. So now Okidogi going to take out this Charmander. Rose Tower also going down, which gives our fighting player a way to draw some additional cards when they are low on hand size. Takes the KO. Charmander goes down. Not going to be able to evolve into that Charizard this turn, unfortunately. It would have been a great way to start powering up that Entei. Entei does require 3 colorless energy. It does 60 damage plus 20 more for each fire energy attached to it. So with that Burn Brightly, if you do have 3 energies attached to that Pokemon, that counts as 6 total energies. You know, you're doing 180 damage, I believe, is what that is. Clara does get that Charmander right back, goes on the bench. Our player really wants to get that Charizard into play. Seems like Singe is going to do a nice little burn to this Okidogi. Not an attack that you see very often. You burn one of those special conditions that is honestly probably the worst. I mean, special conditions in general in Pokemon are unfortunately kind of weak. Poison's okay. It has its uses. There are some poison decks, specifically in GLC, that aren't too bad. Sleep, is a 50% chance to keep your opponent from attacking and retreating next turn. Paralyze usually has big downsides and usually a little bit luck based to actually apply. But burn is just 20 damage, flip a coin. If heads, then they are no longer burned. Not the best effect in the world. 20 damage, usually not going to make much of a difference. Honestly, even in GLC, does put a float stone down on Fuecoco, uses that singe, so burning that Okidogi, going to do 20 damage, and then we'll have to flip to see if it goes away. I think our fighting player might have been confirming exactly how burn works. It's probably the number one thing I get asked from players, especially when it comes to questions about stat conditions, is how the heck does this stupid effect work? Nobody knows because nobody uses burn. Looks like that burn is healed, did get a heads, so only getting 20 damage after that, but now our Okidogi has only 200 HP left. Say only as if that's not a massive amount of HP still. On our fire player's side, there's really not a way for them to KO this Okidogi next turn. They're gonna need some way to get additional energies onto this Entei, as well as evolving into that Charizard to have any hopes to get a KO. It's definitely not impossible, but it will take a very specific amount of cards to get there. Another way they could potentially use it is use that Gouging Fire. It does do 170 damage when your opponent has 4 or less prizes, which after our fighting player almost certainly takes a KO this turn, they will be able to do full damage with that Blazing Charge on Gouging Fire. Does get Fanfi from the prizes using that Hisuian Heavy Ball. Donphan, a great card in fighting. For 1 energy, it can do Earthquake, which is 120 damage. Does damage your bench Pokemon, puts 20 damage on all of them. But in this version of fighting, that's really not that big a deal. You want damage on your bench Pokemon to activate that Hisuian Growlithe. Or really the Hisuian Arcanine. Hisuian Arcanine does 120 damage for 0 energy as long as one of your Pokemon is damaged on the bench. Pokestop getting a couple of items there. Did find that Evo Soda, so going to be able to go get that Hisuian Arcanine. Fanfi can't evolve this turn since it was just benched. Evo Soda does not get around those evolution rules. So there we go. Got that Arcanine. Again, Arcanine can do 120 damage with... I don't know what the Fangs is called. Proud Fangs. So yeah, Proud Fangs does 120 damage. Again, for 0 energy, as long as one of your Pokemon on the bench has any damage counters on it. So again, it's why that Fanfi is a good combination. Once it evolves into Donphan, that Earthquake is putting damage on all of your bench Pokemon. So Arcanine can just keep attacking for free over and over and over again. Nice way to kind of get around one of fighting's weaknesses, which is the fact that it doesn't have a lot of great energy acceleration. So as many attackers as it can have for 1 or 0 energies usually makes it a little bit more consistent of a deck. Because our player doesn't have too many other options in hand. Could potentially use that Field Blower to get rid of their opponent's Floatstone, but that's probably a little premature. Ultimately uses that Good Punch to take out that Slugma, and up goes Fuecoco. Since it does have that Floatstone, it's a great pivot option, so now you've got plenty of options to decide where you ultimately want to end your turn with. Rare Candy evolving into that Burn Brightly Charizard, so now getting double the effect of all fire energies in play, which unfortunately for our fire player at the moment is just the one. Yeah, they haven't played supporter for turn, so if they do have a way to potentially look for Blacksmith or Welder, they could still potentially piece something together this turn. Not really sure what they have left in their hand. Do have a Rescue Scratcher to get that Slugma back. Slugma is something you want to keep in play because you want to get into that Mag Cargo, start being able to put something onto the top of your deck, which with this Pokestop in play could actually work perfectly. You could use that Mag Cargo, put an item you need on top, Pokestop, guarantee that item. It would be a good way to use that against your opponent. Looks like they're debating where to probably, put an energy card. Seems like they want to put it on the Entei. Entei now does have enough energies to attack because of Burn Brightly Charizard. but it won't be enough to actually get the KO. Marnie goes down, so both players going to shuffle his hands, put them at the bottom of the deck. Fire will draw 5 cards, and our fighting player will only draw 4. So currently doing, would that be 60 damage plus an additional 20, 40, 60, 80. So again, not quite, does need 200 damage to be able to take out this Okidogi. Gonna believe I think you need 2 more energies to get there, because even if you've got a third on there, which would technically count. Ooh, kind of a rough poke stop there. Getting rid of that Croconaw as well as that Volcanion does find the quick ball, but at this point, I'm not even sure there's any more basics in the deck that you would care about grabbing, so not the most useful item. Does have that Great Hearth, is going to be another way to find some fighting energy cards. Does, I believe, let you discard a card from your hand and then go search your deck for 2 fire energy cards. Fire is one of those decks I haven't seen super often, so there's still many cards that when I see them, can't always quite remember what they do, but again, pretty sure that is what you are able to do. So will be a helpful way to start powering up additional Pokemon. You know, again, with that Charizard in play, it's a lot easier to now power up their Pokemon. Is debating using a Quick Ball. So clearly our player thinks there's something in their deck they might want to go get. Does ultimately, oh, nope. Discards that fire energy using Great Hearth instead. Going to be able to search out some additional fire energies. Again, Great Hearth is a good way to activate either Blacksmith or Welder, whichever one of those ones lets you put energies from your hand. Then does use the Quick Ball from one of those fire energies. Gets the Chi-Yu. All right, yeah. Okay, so did have one other basic. Chi-Yu is actually a good play here. Going to be able to either accelerate some more energies from the discard onto their Pokemon, or use that Magnifier of Envy. Still won't KO this Okidogi, because it does have 200 HP left. You know, that's only doing, I believe, about 140, 150 damage. Usually enough to take a KO, but in this situation, it's not going to be good enough. So might opt for the Firebringer attack instead. Firebringer lets you attach, I believe it's 2 fire energies from your discard to one of your Pokemon on your bench. So again, could be a way to power up that Entei even more. Get it ready to take out anything on their opponent's side next turn. You know, also, you know, it won't progress, you know, actually KOing this Okidogi. But, you know, maybe if they've got an enhanced hammer or something, they could actually take a KO this turn. See what they're going to do. They do retreat. Up goes Entei. Again, not going to do quite enough damage. Should be 20 times 4, so you got 80 plus 60. Just going to give us 140 damage plus that 3. We're at 170. Still has 30 HP left on this Okidogi. Maybe setting up for a really powerful attack next turn. You know, one nice thing about this Entei, again, with that pressure ability, it's got effectively 150 HP, so it won't be KO'd by Okidogi this turn. We'll slow down the prize trade, because at the moment, this Okidogi is just kind of running away with the game. Tag call goes down, going to find Guzman Hala, and most likely Cynthia and Caitlyn. Tends to be the 2 tag team cards that most decks play. Either doesn't play Cynthia and Caitlyn, or that is prize, as it seems like they just grabbed that Guzman Hala. Ultimately using that, discarding Iono, and I believe that's Random Receiver. Can't quite read that from here. Now going to be able to go find a Stadium, Tool Card, and Special Energy. Wouldn't be surprised if we see Brooklet Hill here to get some additional basic Pokemon down, but it seems like they're opting for Practice Studio instead. I think that boosts your stage 1's HP by 30, if I remember correctly. Might just be 20. This is probably a deck that's running lots of stage 1s. We already know you've got the Hisuian Arcanine. It has that Dawn Fan. Ooh, there comes the Muscle Band. Muscle Band is going to overcome that pressure. Will allow Okidogi to do 160 damage to still be able to take the KO this turn. See what energy they grab. Might grab something like that Strong Energy if they run it. It's usually an energy that most fighting decks will run. Let your fighting Pokemon do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. It's kind of like a no-brainer. It's almost like, why wouldn't you run it in basically any fighting deck? Unless you just really want to focus in on basic energies. You know, again, it's a great way to be able to power up one of your Pokemon's attack and maybe take a KO that you couldn't have otherwise taken. Could also maybe see a Luminous Energy come down. Okay, so they are dropping for the Brooklet Hill. My opinion, that makes a lot more sense here than the other stadium. You don't have a lot of your stage 1s in play just yet. And you do need to start setting up more of your board. You know, Fire is not in the best spot at the moment, but as long as that Burn Brightly Charizard is in play, at any moment they could just start going off. It wouldn't take too many energies to just power up something like that Gouging Fire and just take KO after KO, which if you don't have a lot of backup down, you're going to quickly get in a really rough situation. Looks like player disagrees with me is, again, going back to debate that practice studio would protect them from stuff like that Chiyu, which they were reading a second ago. It's not a terrible choice, not trying to argue with our player here, but at least in my opinion, I would rather that Brooklet Hill. Ultimately grabs that unit energy, usually way to power up that Okidogi. Could be nice protection here if their opponent does run Enhanced Hammer, so if Rainbow Energy goes off, then they can potentially just use that unit energy if they're able to Okidogi back. Something I kind of would love to see, honestly, from our Fire player, just because it would be a really fun play to see. Oh, wow, interesting. Ultimately opting to put that unit energy on. I guess they're choosing to retreat. Yeah, okay, here we go. So they're going to retreat, going up with that Suin Arcanine, which even with Muscle Band isn't going to be able to KO this turn. So it does 120. It does have that pressure. So kind of confused by that play a little bit. Maybe practice studio doesn't boost your damage, does it? I thought it boosted your HP. You know, I guess it must boost damage rather than HP, because they do have more damage on here than they should. You know, if it was just doing 120 minus that 20 from pressure. So looks like our player forgot to account for that pressure ability. Coming in very handy for our Fire player. Blacksmith is in hand. Gonna get 2 fire energies down onto that Gouging Fire. Or actually, maybe they're deciding to go somewhere else with it. Nope. Does ultimately put on the Gouging Fire. Again, we've got the primitive past version of the Entei down there. Gonna back up his friend in the active. Since our opponent, the fighting player, is down on only 4 prizes, that Blazing Gouge attack can do, I believe it's 170 damage for just those 3 energies. Which again, since Burn Brightly is in play, there are plenty of energies on this Gouging Fire to actually use the attack. But for now, doesn't need to do that. Gonna go ahead and just take the KO on Arcanine. Looks like our fighting player is trying to confirm, like, wait a second, how are you able to attack right now? You need 3 energies, but we do have that Burn Brightly Charizard. Takes that KO. Does opt for the... What the heck is the name of that base form? It's the baby form of Salazzle. For anybody that doesn't know, the Salazzle... Oh, real quick, so we do have Judge going to get a reset of the hand, so that Salazzle that was grabbed is going to go right back in the deck. I think it's called Saldent, whatever the basic is called. But the evolution of it, the Salazzle, lets you discard a fire energy from your hand and then draw additional cards. Combos very well with Slugma, as well as cards like that Blacksmith. Unfortunately for our Fire player, we know that they are down both their Raihan as well as their Versus Seeker, so they don't have a lot of ways to recover those supporters and also to get back into the game if their opponent does ultimately KO a lot of their Pokemon. You know, Fire does struggle getting energies into play, especially if it doesn't have the Burn Brightly Charizard. It does rely heavily on stuff like Mela, Blacksmith, Raihan to get those KOs and get the energy that they need in play. So knowing that those resources are already gone for our Fire player and we're down ways to recover them in that Versus Seeker might hurt them in the late game. Looks like our fighting player finds the Donphan and Drillbur off of that Judge. Also gets an Acrobike. opts to put the Professor's Research in the discard pile and use Bicycle, so going to be able to draw up to 4 cards. Does find a Riolu, and looks like the evolution of that Drillbur, so it does have additional attackers now set up on the board. 1 energy is enough to be able to power up Donphan and use that Earthquake. But before doing that, I'm going to go ahead and just use that Good Punch, take the KO on Entei. Up comes Fuecoco, using him as a pivot Pokemon again. Again, with 3 prizes left, Gouging Fire can do more than enough damage to take out this KO. Honestly, you could just use Lunge Out, which I believe does 30 damage exactly to take out this Okidogi. But I think ideally what our Fire player wants to do, assuming they run Enhanced Hammer, if they could Enhanced Hammer that energy away, that would KO Okidogi, then they'd be able to go up with Gouging Fire and take another KO this turn. That could get them right back in this game and tie up that prize trade. Muscle Band looks like it's going to go down on Chi-Yu. Going to boost the damage a little bit onto that Chi-Yu. Field Blower gets rid of that Stadium. See if our Fire player is able to get any more energies into play. They're really they're also still in a tough spot too. They do have Mela. Mela's going to get 1 more energy into play. Also going to allow them to draw some additional cards. Not totally sure how many cards are in our Fire player's hand. Looks like they're going to actually get to draw 4, so not a bad Mela at all. Now can attack with that Chi-Yu this turn. Might be the way to go, though I think personally Gouging Fire might be the better option. Yeah, we did... The Muscle Band, we know, was shoveled back in from Fighting's own judge. So that's not a risk at this point to counter KO this Gouging Fire. Gouging Fire has the best chance of actually surviving through next turn. Since again, Donphan only requires 1 energy to power up. Our Fire player should be trying to take that into account and know, like, what can I be worried about here? What is the biggest threats? Alternatively, Chi-Yu could be the good option just to go ahead and get the KO when you can. Same time, though, you only need to do 30 damage. 30 damage is not that difficult to do. Actually, almost in range for that burn to actually be useful, but still not quite. Going to be shuffling in an energy, Entei, as well as the Croconaw back into the deck, so potentially is going to open up that Skeledirge line later down. We do know Rare Candy is gone, so it would be the only way to get into that Skeledirge is if you can do the evolution the old-fashioned way. Use Ultra Ball, might go ahead and get that Crocolar. Well, so it's not Croconaw, sorry, it's Crocolar. I was thinking of a different Pokemon. It's a water Pokemon, not a fire Pokemon. So is able to get into that middle evolution. Now just needs to find the final form to start taking some additional KOs with that. That was a great way to continue to progress that board state. Also gets an energy on there. Fire's starting to look in a much more solid position. Retreats, debating between that Gouging Fire and Chi-Yu. Does opt for Gouging Fire. Takes the KO. Gonna grab that Fire energy. Great choice in this situation. Other cards, not really useful. Hisuian and Heavy Ball can't even be played, and there's no basics in there anyway. Charmeleon not useful since Charizard's already in play. Really, Tate and Lice is the only prize they really care about left. The only other reason they care about their prizes is obviously they need to take them all to win the game. So Brooklet Hill goes down. Going to find another basic Pokemon for our fighting player. Does get that Tinglu. Tinglu is a way to set up some additional damage on both your opponent's active as well as all their bench Pokemon. As long as there is a... Well, why did Brooklet Hill just go to the discard? Yeah, not sure why Brooklet Hill got moved over there. We'll see if our players noticed that. I didn't see them play Field Blower, and it looks like it's just the 1 card there. So they didn't use any effects to actually discard a Stadium there, I don't believe. So pausing at this play just real quick, yeah, it does look like the player did discard their Brooklet Hill for no reason. I think maybe they got a little confused. They put their Tinglu down, which does have an attack where if you use it, it will damage your opponent's bench Pokemon and you discard a Stadium in play. Maybe they just were thinking ahead a little bit. Ultimately doesn't really affect the game, but little mistake by our players here. Just wanted to go ahead and acknowledge that. Does use that Field Blower to get rid of 2 tool cards. So again, not sure where that Brokelet Hill just went. Does use Earthquake, slams down on the table, 120 damage. I'm sorry, that's not Earthquake, that's the Exadrill's attack. So does mill a couple of cards, still doesn't take the KO. Arvin going down, going to find a tool card as well as an item. Getting that Evolution Incense and that TM Evolution. Almost certainly not going to use the TM Evolution. Already basically has all our Evolution Pokemon in play. Probably just grabbed because it's the last tool card in the deck. We have basically seen all the tool cards that Fire usually plays. Opting for the Mag Cargo. Now going to be able to search the deck for 1 card and put it on the top. Fortunately, we don't get to see what that card is, but I think it might have been the Skelly Dirge. I believe I saw it in the deck at first, but then it wasn't in the same place that it was once it went off camera. Does look like one of the cards that was milled by fighting was that Versus Seeker. So they don't have a way to recover things either. Do have that Skelly Dirge. TM Evolution going down, but doesn't use that. Attacks instead, takes another prize. TM Evolution goes to the discard. Does draw the strong energy, so I guess our fighting player just passed. So yeah, Gouging Fire just takes another KO there. Not really sure why they didn't go up with the Donphan. Maybe that was just a mistake. Kind of little surprise of that play there from our fighting player. Does ultimately takes a KO from Donphan. Puts 20 damage on Tinglu because of that Earthquake's effect. Gouging Fire does go down. It's 2-2 on the prizes here. Chi-Yu can potentially take a KO this turn on the Donphan, but does opt for Skelly Dirge instead. Definitely the safer play. No reason to risk that Chi-Yu. Entei does go down. Does take out that Donphan. This is just KO after KO. Quick plays going here. Trekking Shoes looking for some kind of card, but things are not looking great here for our fighting player. This Tinglu doesn't have any friends on the bench anymore. Clara does go down, going to get 2 energies and 2 Pokemon from the discard most likely. Not really sure what options are going to be helpful here. There's only 1 prize remaining for fighting. This might be it. See if our fighting player can piece something together. Maybe they see something that I don't. Does find that Okidogi, gets that Fanfy. Nope, looking like they might want something else. Going for that Drillbur. Doesn't opt for any of the fighting energies, though. Oh, nope, looks like they're going back in. So, gonna get those. Now, Police does have something they can attack with this turn. But how are they gonna get this Chi-Yu out of the active and keep it from just getting KO'd by the Skelly Dirge next turn? I guess actually, yep, so there we go. There's the game, pass for turn. Fire takes the win. Good job by our Fire player. First Fire deck, I believe, shown on the channel and takes the win. Congratulations.